Welcome back to a new episode of Code Savvy. In this session, what we'll be seeing is how you can create Google OAuth credentials and use them to connect your Google nodes within n8n. So essentially, when you create a Google node within n8n, you would need to authorize it to connect to Google services. The reason I'm doing this video is because this is something that I personally use extensively a lot, and when I demo this particular functionality in future sessions, I don't want to keep repeating myself. So there is a selfish motive. So I could just say, you know what, I've linked this video in the description below. Just go and check it out, how you can create these credentials and connect Google services to native. So that's the whole purpose of it. So I'll be showing you how you can connect Google Drive, Google Sheets, Google Docs. These are the three things that I will demo. You could also extend it to other Google services like Gmail, for example, and it works exactly the same. Okay, so without much ado, let's get rolling. I have spun up a local instance of n8n using npm. If you wanted, you could just use Docker Compose, or if you have a cloud version, you could use that. It doesn't matter from where you actually spin up your n8n instance, as long as you have one up and running. And if you're interested on how to spin up your n8n instances locally, just check out my previous videos, which I have linked in the description below, where I have explained in detail the various different methods by which you can spin this up locally and host it. So once I'm on my dashboard, let me just create a new workflow, and I'll just add a first step. Just let me search for Google Drive. Okay, and I'll just say, I'll just select, for example, I want it to trigger on changes to a specific file. So if I wanted, I could say changes to a specific folder. Let me choose the second one, because essentially what I want to happen is within a folder in Google Drive, whenever a new file arrives, I want to trigger a workflow. So let me select this thing here, and it immediately comes to the configuration page. Now on this page, by default, it brings up my credentials, which I've already created. So I won't be using this. I'll just show you how we can create a new credentials. So to create the new credentials, what I'll do is I'll click on this drop down here, and I will click on this plus symbol, create new credentials, and it'll bring up this screen. Right. So it will show me the redirect URL, which I will be needing. This is something I'll be copy pasting into the Google OAuth credential screen. So something, just copy it and keep it safe. And then you need your client ID and client secret to be generated. So the next step is to see how we can generate this. So in order to generate your client ID and client secret, so essentially your OAuth credentials, just search for Cloud Console and click on the first link that comes up, or alternatively just type in https console.cloud.google.com. Now this will open up your cloud. If you already have a project created within your Google Console, Cloud Console, you will see something similar to this. If not, it will prompt you to create a new project. Just go ahead and just follow the prompts. It's relatively straightforward, right? And then you can see your project number, your project ID, which I have blanked out for obvious security concerns. Next, what you need to do is you need to click on your APIs and services. So on a quick access API and services, that is what you need to click. This will bring you into this screen here. And as you can see, I've already enabled some APIs and services. So for Docs, Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Sheets, generative language, this is what I have already enabled. In your case, if you're doing it for the first time, you should see a blank screen. So remember, we are on the REST APIs and services, and we are on the left-hand pane within the enabled APIs and services section. Just click on the enable APIs and services. Right. So for example, if I'm trying to create a credential for Google Drive, I just search for Drive, or alternately, I just scroll down and I should see this here, the Google Drive API. Okay, just click on that, right, and just click on Manage. This will enable your API. Now, the second step we need to do is to create some credentials for this API. So I'll click on the credential screen. And once you're inside the credential screen, you will see a list of the credentials that you previously created. So I have some credentials that I have already created, but in our case, we'll create a new credentials. Okay, so just click on create credentials, and I'll just use OAuth client ID. Remember, select OAuth client ID because this is the recommended way by which you can connect Google services to external apps, which in our case is n8n, which we are hosting internally. Okay, so just click on that, and it will ask you some questions. So what is the application type? Since we are using n8n, which is a web app, you should have something like web application. Just select that, just give it a name. Okay, so I'll just say this is n8n YouTube. Okay, and now it says, as you can see, it asks for your redirect URL. Okay, right. So remember when I showed you the n8n Google Drive trigger node, I asked you to copy that callback URL. This is what we have to provide here. Okay, let me show you what I mean. So I go back here, and the OAuth redirect URL, just click it to copy, go back to Google. Okay, right, we're on this page, and I'll just say add a URL. There you go, and I just say create, and this will generate the client ID and client secret for me. This is not something you're supposed to share. Okay, so just keep it secret. For me personally, I will be deleting this credentials soon after I finish recording this video there. So just copy the client ID and client secret. Before you proceed any further, you need to set up some test users. So essentially, remember that your OAuth access is enabled only for your test users. So you would need to go into the audience tab on your left hand side here, and then add some test users. As you can see, I've already added a couple of test users, which are essentially my test emails. So go ahead, click on plus, and just add some users there. So you just need to provide the email ID. Now let us come back to the n8n configuration node, and let me just copy paste the client ID and the client secret. There you go. Okay, and let me hit save. And as you can see, it has been saved. Now after you copy pasted your client ID and client secret, just scroll down towards the bottom and click on sign with Google. This will bring up a pop-up whereby it will list the Google accounts that you have, and if you wanted, you could add another Google account. Just select any Google account that you want for it to be authenticated with, and just click on it, and we say continue. It will say n8n wants to access to your Google account. It will have your account name, which I blanked out for mine for security concerns. Just read through it. Since I'd already created some credentials, it says n8, and n8n has already some access. Read through the terms and conditions and click on continue, and it will say connection is successful. Now, in case if it doesn't work for the first time, and this happens quite often, then you would believe. So if it doesn't work for the first time, just give it a couple of minutes and then try again. It should reconnect. This is the way you do it. Right, now let me go back to my canvas, and you can, yeah, and you can see, okay, it says the parameter folder is required, which I need to fill, and that is why I'm having this warning, because the configuration is not yet complete. So let me double click it again. On the configuration pane, the mode, so it will ask me for the poll times. I can select every minute, every hour, every day. I'll just keep it as every minute. I can use a custom expression if I wanted, which would essentially be a cron expression, but I'm not going to do that. Just may leave it for every minute. I could add other poll times, not interested. And here it gives me an option to trigger on, which is essentially when should this trigger work? Is it changes involving a specific folder, or is it changes to a specific file? I'll just select changes involving a specific folder. That's what we are interested in. Now, in case my authentication setup was successful, right? I should be able to see all the folders within Google Drive, right, that I have created. So make sure that you are on the folder configuration part here, and keep the configuration from list, and then click on this drop down. This should bring up all my Google folders within my Google Drive. Okay, so let me just select, for example, let me just select Aristotle question, and I'll just say watch for. So what should be the trigger event that this node should watch out for? So I'll just say when a file is created. Okay. Now note what it says. It says that changes within subfolders won't trigger this node. So if you have a subfolder within this main folder called Aristotle Q, this will not trigger the changes. It would not know of that changes. So make sure that whenever you create a file, you put it on the root folder, which is Aristotle Q here. And let me go back to the canvas. The error should now be gone. Now you can see it's all hunky-dory. Now let us test this out. So as you can see, I am in my Aristotle Q Google Drive folder, and let me try to add a file to it. So what I'll do is I'll just do new, okay, file upload. So let me just upload a file, and you can see it being uploaded here. Now let us go back to our n8n trigger node, and let me execute this workflow, right? And you can see the workflow has been executed. Now say I wanted to add a Google Sheet or a Google Doc to this workflow. The way I would do it, I'll just search for Google. Yeah, I'll just open this. Let me try for Google Sheet, and just me say I just want to get some rows from a sheet. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. Now the steps remain exactly the same as previous. As you can see, it asks for your credentials, so you can use the credentials that I had created previously, or I need a new credential, right? So remember, the credential that I just created was just for Google Drive. So if I need a new credential for this, I essentially need to create a new one here. And the way you would do it would be exactly the same as previously. Just click on create new credentials, select this, select the copy paste, and keep the redirect URL safely, because that's what you would need. And then you would need to generate the client ID and client secret from the Google Cloud Console there. And before you generate the OAuth credentials, make sure you have enabled the right APIs and services. So just to recap, just click on this part here, right? And it will show you which are the APIs available. Just scroll down or search for it, and say if you wanted Gmail or Google Sheets. In our case, we are using Google Docs, right? So let me search for, yeah. So you'll get the Google Docs API here. Just click on it and make sure that you have enabled it, right? So it will say, since I've already enabled it, I don't need to re-enable it. But what I'm trying to say here is, if it is for the first time you're doing it, you have to enable this API. Similarly, just if you want to enable the Google Sheets API, just search for, no, not Vash, yeah, it brings up, it's clever enough to understand my spelling mistake, by the way. So just click on this and just make sure that this is enabled, this API enabled. Once you have done that, go back to your within the credential screens. The other steps remain exactly the same, so just click on create credentials and just follow the steps that I've just shown you to do, and you will get your new client ID and client secret for Google Docs, Google Sheets. If you want, you could add Gmail, and so on, so forth. Once you have set up your credentials successfully for whatever node you choose, so for in this case, I'm just gone with the Google Sheets, getting rows from a Google Sheet here. I'll just select that credentials here, and I'll just say the resource that I want is the sheet within the document. So remember, Google Sheets can have multiple sheets. So I'll just say I just need a sheet within the document. I'll say get row, so I can insert a row, I can append a row. Getting a row is absolutely fine. And from here, I'll just say from list. By the way, I can add an URL or an ID, which I'll discuss in a second here. But let's just stick with from list here. And if I click on the drop down, it should bring me a list of the available Google Sheets that I have created. And there you are, right? So it brings quite a few sheets here. Let me just select this one, like I chose biryani delivery. And then it asks me which sheet do I need to take from that document here. So again, just select from list, and I'll just say I just need the menu. So this is just a proof of concept I did for a demo regarding a delivery service for a food restaurant. I will be demoing this in a later session. Okay, so don't worry, I'll be demoing all the nodes in later sessions here. The scope of this session is essentially to show you how you can create Google credentials and how you can use it to enable your Google nodes to work within your locally hosted n8n or your cloud host. It doesn't matter. All right. And there you go. So if I go back, this should be enabled, right? Now, this doesn't make any sense that I connected to this, because Google trigger is just a trigger, right? So once I get a trigger, what I essentially would need to do is I would need to understand what sort of file it is. I would need to parse it. I probably need to connect it to a AI agent, and then from that I would probably update or get some rows. So this thing would probably come as a tool. So this flow doesn't make any sense, but this is just to demo to you how you can authenticate your various Google nodes with Google OAuth tokens. Okay. Now, some of you might feel a bit disjointed because I did not actually create a flow, but that was the whole point here. The point was not to create a n8n flow, but to actually demo how you could use certain Google nodes, or how you could set up the authentication for them. But don't worry, very soon in future sessions, I will be demoing these nodes. I will be using it in various flows. So till then, adios.